G'day legends, in this video I'm going to show you a quick way to spice up some lead guitars, make them sound a little bit more exciting, add a bit more presence to them and get them sitting in the mix way better. So what we're going to do is create a bit of a lo-fi delay effect that's going to add some nice space and presence to this guitar solo, as well as a little bit of processing that's going to spice it up a bit. So check it out. So you can hear with that little bit of processing that we're adding here, it makes it sound way more exciting, way cooler, just sits in the mix a lot better. So there's not really that much going on here. So I'm just going to run you through the overall processing of the guitar solo as well as the effects that are added to it. So our first plugin is just Pro Q3. I mean, you could do this with any EQ really. And it's just a high pass filter and a low pass filter. So we're just high passing up to 182 Hertz. Don't really need any information below there. And also low passing up to 13K. It's not really doing that much. It's just making sure we're not getting any rumble, rolling off some of that really ultra high air that we don't really need in the solo, and that's about it. The overall tone of the guitar solo was working really well, so I didn't really feel like I had to EQ it that much. And that's also a really great point to make, that sometimes in mixes we just want to EQ things and just start doing stuff, but sometimes it doesn't need it. It actually sounds good as is, and so in this case it sounded pretty good as is. There's also another guitar playing a lower octave of the solo, and we've just got a similar EQ, but also with a little cut at around 1.4K. Okay, so both of those guitars are then being sent to our solo guitar bus, and the first plugin on that bus is Safari Pedals Time Machine. And this is a really cool plugin that kind of emulates different EQs of different eras of music. Basically, it's just like a vintage tone box kind of thing, has sort of like different filters and EQs. So we've got the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, just gives you a different color and EQ. And then we can drive the input for more saturation. We've got some compression and then an output trim. There's also auto gain, which is great if you don't want to have any sort of like change in volume when you're sort of pushing things up and down. And then there is a mix knob, and there's also a noise knob that lets you add a bit of noise to your track, depending if you want to have that kind of lo-fi analog console tape machine noise in there. That stuff can be pretty fun, but for this we don't really need to crank that up. Now I am driving the input to add a little bit of extra saturation, pushing it into the compression a little bit, and just a small amount of trim, and we're running it on the 60s setting with a 40% blend, and it sounds like this. So really cool, just thickens the sound up. I'll show you what it sounds like as you drive the input. So you can definitely add a little bit of extra edge to your sound, a bit of saturation, which is what I wanted to do with this solo, just add a little bit more excitement by driving that input a little bit more. I'll quickly show you what these different filters sound like on the mix bus, because it's easier to hear what it's doing across a full mix as opposed to just like a single guitar solo. So it's pretty cool, adds its own little vintage color and flavor to your mix depending on the area you choose. And this can just be a great way of spicing up a sound, even just creating some nice lo-fi effects. I could imagine that 50s sound on some drums could sound really cool in like a filtered drum section. So lots of creative options with Time Machine. So I'm following that up with just some stock Logic EQ, just a small cut around 845 Hertz, just 3 dB cut here, and we're just sort of dealing with a little bit of that mid-range honk in the guitar. pretty subtle cut. It's not doing heaps, but it does make it sit in the mix a little bit nicer. All right, so this is where the fun is. So we have a bus set up, so we're sending this to bus 10, and then over on bus 10, our first plugin is Safari Pedals Yak Delay. Yak. It's a pretty wild sounding effect. So pretty hectic. Now I've got the blend on this at 100% because we're using it as a send. If we had it on the actual guitar bus, you'd maybe just have like a small amount of blend and sort of blend it in with the dry signal. So it's got high pass and low pass filters, which we have set to 56 Hertz and 4.1K. Now these aren't just standard basic filters. They're actually quite steep and they have a bit of a resonant peak on them. So they create a nice filtery effect. Have a listen to what it sounds like as I sweep through these. So you can hear they sound really fun and colourful because they're not just a basic band, they have a little bit of a boost in them as well. So it creates that nice resonant peak that sweeps through the sound. So there's a drive knob if you want to add a little bit of saturation to the delay. Sounds pretty cool. It does boost the sound up, so you would need to pull the output down to level match it. So we have our time knob, which you can have in milliseconds, but I've also chosen to sync it to the DAW, so we can have it locked to a quarter note, and it's nice and tight with the music. Now the delay itself, when it's pushed out into the stereo field, it is a ping pong delay. But if you have the width pulled all the way in, you get a nice mono delay as well. So the further you push it out, it starts to turn into that ping pong delay sound. Then obviously you can set your repeats, your feedback, and we have it set pretty low, around 10%. Just kind of creating a bit more of like a slappy kind of sound as opposed to a long rolling delay effect. So it's making it sound nice and exciting. You probably feel like it's a bit overkill at the moment, but the next plugin kind of pulls it all in and glues it together. So then we're following this up with Safari Pedals Rhino Reverb, and this is just a nice fun spring reverb, which it sounds really cool. I've added this after the delay to kind of just smooth it out a bit. So there's something going on here that's just sort of smoothing this out really nicely. I've just pushed the reverb up to about 69%, and then we have the filter set to 23%, and then our width at 57%, and the blend at 31%. And then I pulled the output down to minus 4.6 dB, and that's how we've got into the sound that we have. But I'll flick through these so you can hear what they do. I'm going to turn the blend up to 100% so you can hear what all these effects do. That's pretty cool. You can get a really nice spring reverb sound there that's a little bit different to your typical reverb, and it just actually smooths this sound out in a really nice way. We've pulled the blend back to around 30%, and even just that is smoothing the delay sound out in a really nice way where it sort of doesn't grab your ears as much. It sort of helps glue it into the mix a bit better. And that is everything. So that's all our effects. So our main ones, our Time Machine, Yak Delay, and Rhino Reverb, and all of those together are giving us a really nice lead guitar solo sound. So it really spices it up and makes that guitar solo sound way more interesting. And the Safari pedals are kind of aimed at that. They're there to make creating interesting sounds way easier, way funner, and it gets you a great sound without you having to strive for it too hard. And you don't necessarily need these plugins to go and create this effect. You can recreate this stuff with stock plugins, but it just might take a couple of extra plugins to kind of get there. And it'll probably sound a little different, but at the same time, you'll still be able to achieve a similar cool effect like this. But if you did like the sound of these plugins and you are keen to check out Safari pedals, then use the link in the description below. I have a link there and you can go to their website, check out their plugins. And by doing that, it also helps support this channel as well. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. If you want to support this channel, check out the description below. Check out the drum samples on my website, mix courses, all that stuff. Big support, and I really appreciate everyone who's done that so far. If you want to check out another video to do with processing lead guitars, then check out this next one coming up, where I'll take you through processing a wide and spacious lead guitar sound.